And welcome to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis, of course. He is Managing Partner of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Good evening, Stewart. How are you?
Doing wonderful. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing great, too. It's always a pleasure to see you. How have you been?
I'm surviving here in this post-COVID world. We're seeing crazy times, aren't we?
We definitely are. And how are your wife and your boys? How is your family doing?
They're good. So my wife's a nurse, and she's kind of working through that environment at her place of business there, and my kids are doing their school stuff now, so yeah, it's all good.
Yep. Are they excited to have the virtual learning, if you will, and then is it one day in classroom, or how are you handling things?
Yeah, so their school actually, they're at a school that actually is doing in class.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're back, and they're loving it, being around their friends. They just need to be around their friends. It's important to them. So
sure, most definitely. So I want to ask you a little bit about we've obviously talked about post COVID-19. What changes are you seeing in the area of retirement, if you will, post COVID-19?
Yeah, I think well, first and foremost, what COVID did for us is that it created us, or it forced us to look at other technologies to make it easier to communicate. Okay. So the benefit of that is that our clients that are snowbirds that leave, it makes it way more personal to have the conversations with them when they're gone.
Sure.
During the summer, half of our clients are gone. So we have clients in Canada, in the Midwest, back east, and it just makes it way more personable to have that face-to-face virtual meeting, rather than just telephone calls. So it makes it fun. Obviously in the office where we take all the precautions recommended by the CDC to make sure everybody's safe when they come in. Okay. It's a huge deal to us to make sure our clients are safe.
Oh, I can totally see that about you, because I know that you're so caring with all of your clients. So I wanted to talk a little bit about annuities today, Stewart, if you don't mind, because I know that there's a lot of conversation around them. I know that there's a commercial that's playing where there's an actor that states that he hates annuities and what have you. So what is your opinion on annuities? Are they beneficial? Should they be part of someone's retirement plan?
Well, the answer is it all depends. It's funny because that same commercial where he says, "I'd rather die and go to hell than buy an annuity." And it's because he sells, stock portfolios. A lot of that's just marketing. People are trying to, stimulate a reaction to you, because if you're buying one, they want to, freak you out about that. And then there's some on the other side that take the opposite approach, where it is the one and only thing you need to buy. I would say it all depends on your situation, and it depends on what kind you're talking about. There's several different kinds. For example, variable annuities are very, very expensive in most cases. The other day I just saw one that actually had really low fees. But the important thing is to understand what you have. Oftentimes with variable annuities, we'll see 1.5% on income rider fees, 1% mortality and expense fees, 1% in fund fees, and then admin fees. And so what we're seeing is up to 4% in fees when it comes to those products. And all that a variable annuity is a group of mutual funds that are in an insurance wrapper that allow the funds to grow tax deferred. But the problem is the cost. If we look back at the S&P 500 from 2000 to 2012, the market made nothing. So understand, if you're paying 4% in fees over that period of time where the S&P was break even, first of all, most funds don't even keep up with the S&P 500 unless you're really, really good. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they kept up. You're down 48% over 12 years, because if you add 4% a year in fees and the market is negative or flat, you're going to be, you're going to have half your money a decade later, 12 years later. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? So what they'll guarantee you is lifetime income payments, and often, in most cases. And I just don't believe in the lifetime income aspect of annuities. I think mathematically it doesn't work out very well for the clients. So where I do think they work is some of the fixed index products that have none of the costs, none of the fees built into them, where it's used to grow your money as an accumulation product, where we're there to make money when the market does well and to not lose when it does bad. I think I like that, but, in some cases, but, when you see, on the radio or on TV or even these internet ads where someone will say guaranteed 7%, well, you just really have to think about it. The interest rate environment is the lowest interest rate environment in history right now. And if the 10-year Treasury is paying, hovering right around 0.5%, how are they going to guarantee you a 7% rate of return? Right? Because their underlying investments basically are bonds, corporate bonds, and so forth.
Okay.
So guaranteeing that is really difficult. But it's a 7%. And what's happening is those guarantees are 7% growth on an income value, not the real value, And when they end up paying out, they end up paying you out at maybe 5% a year. And what they tell you is your payout's 5%. But remember, if all they're doing is handing you back your own money, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Just remember, a 5% payout would take 20 years for you to break even.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so does it really make sense if you're 65 years old, you buy a 10-year annuity, but you start the payments, 10 years from now at 75, you have to be 95 just to get your money back. You just stick it in a can.
Sure.
But if you use an accumulation strategy, something that you pay less fees on, less costs, and it can actually grow, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Stewart, can you help someone determine what type of annuity they have? Because perhaps some people don't even know what's in their portfolio.
Sure. That, honestly, about half of the work that we see now is analyzing annuities for clients in their portfolio reviews.
Okay.
And it's really, really important to know what you have, because some people really believe they're making 7% on their account. And it's really just this sub-account that does it. So, sometimes I have to be the bearer of bad news, but quite honestly, the other day I saw a great one.
Oh, good.
And what's also important, we have a local advisor here that uses a top quality company, top quality product, but then they allocate it improperly inside because they create, it matters, every stage of it matters to make sure you do well. It needs to perform.
Absolutely, and that's where you come into play. You're able to take a look at anyone's portfolio just by coming in, sitting with you. You can help them determine what's working, what's not, and how to get them to the best place for retirement.
Absolutely.
Well, Stewart, it's about time for us to open up the phone lines again this week. Can you tell the viewing audience what they can expect to receive by being one of your first 10 callers this week?
Absolutely. So if you're one of the first 10 callers, what we'll do is we'll provide a complimentary portfolio analysis. And in that complimentary analysis, if you have an annuity that you're questioning whether it's good or bad, we would absolutely do a complete annuity analysis for you as well to tell you what your fees are, what your costs are, how is it going to perform, is it a guaranteed for life, and to really get rid of any sort of misconceptions you have about what you have. So just call 833-652-7829. We'd be glad to help.
Stewart, thank you so much. To the viewing audience at home, the phone lines are now open. That number to call once again is 833-652-7829. We know in the past the phone lines have been busy, so we added an additional phone line this week. That number to call once again is 833-652-7829. We have to take a very short commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to have more questions and answers for Stewart about planning your perfect and stress-free retirement. Please stay tuned.
What happens oftentimes is we'll run into clients or potential clients that have saved all this money, but they're 75, 80 years old. They've got this big pile of money, but they're not enjoying retirement because they're so worried about running out of money that they never actually get to enjoy their life's work. And so to me, it's really rewarding to be able to create a plan so that these people can have a great time in retirement, knowing that they're not going to run out, that they're going to be fine. I think it brings a smile to their face.
We get a lot of different people at a lot of different stages in their lives. And what we're able to do is, for some folks, it's able to tell them that you're on track. Keep doing what you're doing, and 15 years from now, you'll be retired and enjoying life the way you want it to be. For some people, it's people coming in and they're 3 to 5 years away from retirement, and you're able to tell them that, 5 years, 3 years, tomorrow, you're ready to go.
We are a complete shop. We handle estate planning, taxes, financial planning. We do a really in-depth cash flow analysis that is way more detailed than you'll see in the market.
everything all in one spot, with the left hand always knowing what the right hand's doing. Because it's not just about the investments, but how's that going to affect your taxes? It's not where are you going to be 5 years from now, 15 years from now. And it's that back and forth full view of what the clients, not only today, but tomorrow and their legacy down the road is going to be, that really sets us apart.
And welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is managing partner of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. I combined the two things together.
I've never heard it pronounced that way, but I like it. I might have to go with it.
You know, it just rolled right off my tongue. So I think I've just developed a whole new segue for you into another office.
Right.
But I wanted to actually, what I was trying to do is mention the tax part of it, because I really wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that, because I want to ask you, how is the tax office going, Stewart? I know it had to have been very busy since we had the extension this year.
It was different.
Yeah.
So, you know, by stretching it out into July, it made it weird. You know, usually by April 15th, we're, 95% done. We have a few extensions. We try not to do extensions. And so, it's made it really awkward and weird for people, because remember, for a lot of other places, they're very seasonal, right? They're, other tax offices are used to shutting down April 15th, and then they go do their other jobs or whatever. They're seasonal workers.
Sure.
For us, we're year round, so it was a little easier to handle.
Okay.
It was just different because it just dragged on until July 15th. It was we had more extensions even past July 15th because of COVID, that people didn't want to deal with it, or they wanted to do it virtually or whatever. So it made it difficult, but we put the name taxes in our name for a reason. It's such an important part of planning, and our tax office is not just about preparing taxes, although, the point of our tax office isn't to make money, it's to break even one day. And, we'll get there one day, but it gives us so much information to do planning for our clients. So, once we have all of their information inside our tax software, it's very easy, because one of the really big hot topics today is Roth conversion. And does it make sense to do a Roth conversion? Well, the answer is sometimes. Not for everybody, but sometimes it does. If you're going to be at a 10 or 12% tax bracket for the rest of your life, it may not make any sense at all to do it. Where if you're going to jump into higher rates, if you have substantial savings, it may, and it's really worth finding out. But what you have to put into perspective today is that we are in the most efficient tax window in history, and it's important to stay within the bracket you're comfortable with, but we don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know what the elections are going to hold. But, one candidate is definitely going to raise taxes, right? They've said it. And the other candidate is trying to keep taxes low. One candidate saying we're going to raise the capital gains tax to an ordinary income because it only affects, wealthy people. Well, wealthy is all perspective, right?
Sure, absolutely it is.
I have clients with a couple $1 million that don't think they're wealthy.
Right,
and are they not? It's all relative, right?
Absolutely.
But it's important to have a tax plan. And I think that's what really separates us from everybody else, is because we have the tools at our disposal to have a real tax plan.
Sure. And why was that important when you were actually developing the company? You obviously saw a need, and that there was maybe one avenue that was being missed a lot by people that were planning for retirement. Is that what gave you the idea to merge these together so you're able to help with taxes as well?
Yeah, so, for the first decade of my career, we didn't have a tax office.
Yeah.
And I thought I knew what I was talking about, and I did the best that I could.
Sure.
But I didn't. And I feel the same way about other advisors. For the last decade that we've had a tax office, it really opened my eyes to how taxes really affect retirement.
Sure.
I always say, if your advisor doesn't have a tax office in their office, it's really difficult to guess, because what ends up happening, you know that Roth does well for some people and doesn't for others. And what ends up happening is the advisor will say, hey, you know what, if you want to do a Roth conversion, go talk to your tax person. And the tax person says, no, go talk to your financial advisor. What ends up happening, nobody ever talks. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and people just don't ever do any affirmative change.
Okay.
Because they're scared, right? Or if you know that you have to go back to your tax person after tax season's over, you end up paying a pretty big fee to do the analysis. Well, at our office, we don't charge for any of that. We don't charge for our financial clients. There are no charges for cash flow. It's all included. It's part of what we do.
Okay.
But no, it gives us a totally different insight into the people's portfolios, their tax situation, their cash flow modeling that we do for the rest of their life. Super, super important.
Absolutely. And I know people have to appreciate having that be more of a one-stop shop, if you will.
Yeah, so the great thing is in our office, we handle all the financial planning, on the investment side. We do taxes. We've had the relationship with the same attorney for 15 years for all of our living trusts, wills, power of attorneys, etc. So estate plans are just as important to be part of your plan, because
Sure.
If you save all this money and it all goes through probate and the attorneys, take this big portion of assets, it doesn't make much sense, right? And so, I almost insist that clients have a trust if they need to, meaning we will refer them to our attorney, that we've dealt with for 15 years, because. And I jokingly tell them, I'm a man of leisure. I don't want to hang out with your kids in probate court, right? I want to make sure everything is in order so that you don't put your kids through that trouble.
Oh yeah, it can be very stressful.
Absolutely. So having that one-stop shop really makes it easy for clients to know that, hey, the instructions are simple. If something happens to me, go to asset preservation. That's the instruction to the kids because it's all here.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. What does the first consultation feel like? To the viewing audience, perhaps that they were one of the first 10 callers today. What is that first consultation like, Stewart?
Honestly, it's just about getting to know each other to see if it's a good fit. Not everybody is going to be a good fit. Not everybody, believe it or not, likes me,
I find that very hard to believe, I just have to say.
No, honestly,
warm.
I think it's super important that the chemistry is right.
Yeah.
Right? That it's a good fit together, that it's going to work, because this is a long-term relation, hopefully, right?
Sure.
You have to do business with somebody that that I can deal with them for the next decade or 20 years. And this, as people get older, just remember that's going to be the person who handles things with your heirs, if there are any, And so we want to make it really easy to communicate, and that's easier. And the truth is, and I tell my clients this, no joke, I do not do business with people I don't like. Very simple. That's why working 12-hour days is easy for me, because I feel like they're my friends.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
But then you go back to the fact when you say, hey, there are these advisors that have been with their clients, or they've been attached to the same client for 20 years. And because we're the snowbird capital, of the world here, and especially in our Sun City office, the reality is that these people like their old advisors, and they'll come in for a consultation and just say, hey, you know what, everything you're saying is great, but my advisor, he's been my guy for 30 years or 20 years, and honestly, sometimes it's not a good fit right now.
Yeah.
But what happens is we get a call a year later, 2 years later sometimes, and they'll say, you know what, you didn't pressure me at all. You knew, you respected my feelings about my advisor. And they come back a year or two later and just say, yeah, my guy retired or he left the business. Oftentimes these advisors will pass their business to their children, and the children don't have the magic that their parents do all the time, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you're giving up a lot by doing business with them, and so they end up coming back sometimes a month, 6 months, years later.
Okay, that's excellent. I love that. Well, Stewart, it's about time to open up the phone lines once again to the viewing audience. Can you tell them what they can expect to receive by being one of your next 10 callers?
Sure. So for the next 10 callers, what we'll do is do a complimentary portfolio analysis. We'll take a look at all the built-in costs in your funds and any sort of management fees you're paying, but also to understand the risk that you're taking to get the reward that you're getting. I think that's a really important proposition to understand. If you just call 833-652-7829, I'd be glad to do that analysis for you.
Thank you, Stewart. To the viewing audience at home, once again, that number is 833-652-7829. We have to take a very short commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to have some viewer questions for Stewart. So please stay tuned. You won't want to miss these. Thank you.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
And welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is Managing Partner of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Stewart, I love this part of the show because this is the topic of viewer questions, and we never know what's coming. And we know that we've had some great one in the past weeks, if you will. So I'm excited to see what's in store for you today.
Nice.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So here's the first one. I was advised to roll my 401k plan from a previous employer into a traditional IRA, which I did. I haven't made any contributions to it since rolling it over, and it has grown very little. I have a 401k with my new employer. Should I roll my traditional IRA into my new 401k account? Stewart, what advice do you have for me? I look forward to hearing.
So, the 401k from your previous employer, there's a couple things to think about when moving from 401k to IRA, like what state you're in, right? Where's your residence? In Arizona, it's a very kind of senior protective state.
Okay.
In other states, not so much. California, for example, where you can, be sued for your IRA. In Arizona, the laws are a little bit different. But when it comes to rolling over your assets, purely from a financial perspective and a performance perspective, I think it's really important to have more choice, right? And so you have to weigh that against some of the other downsides of it. Like if you're rolling assets out, and part of the question was, should I roll assets into my existing employer's 401k? Well, we're actually getting the opposite question of should I roll my 401k, my existing 401k at my existing employer out to an IRA? And that's a little bit more complicated because there are some downsides, like your ability to borrow money against your 401k, et cetera. But moving your previous 401k out into an IRA usually makes sense from a performance perspective because you have way more options. So when people bring over their 401ks to us, we have to roll it to an IRA. That gives us more ability to convert that to Roth if it makes sense in their tax situation. But it also allows us to use our world-class money managers to oversee the performance. Because the world-class money manager at your old 401k is generally you, and so it all depends on your comfort level with handling that, your expertise. Does it make sense in these volatile times, et cetera? But no, I think it's a case-by-case basis on whether it makes sense, but that's actually something that's really important to look at, and we do that in our analysis that we talked about at the break.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Stewart. So it says, Stewart, I am 70. And I'm turning 70 in November. And no, I'm not 70. Sometimes I feel it. I'm turning 70 in November. When will I be required to make my first RMD? And can I avoid taking the initial withdrawal and the second withdrawal in the same year? Those are great questions.
Well, so a lot has changed. Because of the Secure Act, we were actually back in Washington having conversations with the staff of both of our senators, and we got to meet with Dave Schweikert, Scottsdale's representative in Congress, and Debbie Lesko on the west side, so both of our office representatives there, and we also met with Andy Biggs. But we were really pushing for the Secure Act, and we didn't get exactly what we were looking for. One of the downsides of that Secure Act was that It changed the way IRA distributions happened. But the benefit in the context of this question is it delayed your required minimum distribution from 70.5 to 72. So at 70, everyone's thinking I need to start taking out this distribution at 70. Well, that's been delayed to 72, no longer 70.5.
Okay.
So she's got another year and a half, 2 years to have to worry about that, which is the good news.
Sure.
But there was some downside to the Secure Act as well, which is the forced payouts over 10 years for IRAs.
Okay.
So, but in answer to her question, you don't have to do it for another couple years. Do not, if you don't need the money now, you don't need to take it. But it may actually make sense to start diffusing it, whether in distributions or Roth conversions, and that's worth looking at.
Okay, excellent advice. Thank you so much. And I think we have time for one more question, Stewart. My wife has been retired from the workforce for 8 years, and the two of us have approximately $750,000 in assets, and we have no debt. Our combined Social Security benefits today would be more than adequate to sustain our current lifestyle. Is there any point in waiting an additional 3 years to retire at full retirement age if I can comfortably live off Social Security benefits now? Stewart, what advice do you have for us?
Well, the important thing to think about is right now you two can live comfortably for the rest of your life together. But the question I would ask is, what if one of you passes away? Is that still the truth? And that's what we do in our scenario builder, in our cash flow analysis, is that we analyze every situation. So we analyze you passing away over, in 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, and what does the cash flow look like at that point? So everything might be good when you're together, but if one of them has a pension and that, that income is dependent on that pension and that pension disappears when one of them passes away, well, they may not be fine. So does delaying Social Security till 66 make sense? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it gives us time to convert to Roth in those years that we're delaying. It's worth looking at, and I think that's an important part of the portfolio analysis.
Absolutely. And Stewart, I think that just has to be something that people understand when they come in to sit with you, that you can help them with any question. We only have just about 45 seconds left in the show, Stewart. I can't believe it. Can you tell the viewing audience one more time what they can expect to receive by being one of your callers this week? Sure.
So for the first 10 callers, what we'll do is that complete portfolio analysis, and we can also do a Social Security analysis to answer that last caller's question to see, does it make sense to take it at 62 or 66 or even delay till 70? Everybody's choice is different. You just want to make sure that it fits you. Just call 833-652-7829, and I'd be glad to take a look at it.
Thank you, Stewart. To our viewers at home, thank you again for spending time with us again this week. We look forward to seeing you next week. We hope that you stay healthy, happy, and blessed. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you soon.